Hi everyone, welcome to Signals. I'm your host Gwen Chen. Every episode, I sit down with leaders to discuss how to turn data into signals, signals into actions, and actions into real growth. Marketing, growth, GTM, and sales. If you want to know what's working, you are in the right place. In my early marketing career, one of my leaders told me, to be a great product marketer in tech, you have to understand the technology. You have to master the art of storytelling. You have to have a deep empathy and a genuine desire to understand your customers. Today's guest embodies all of that. Shruti Koparkar has over a decade of experience bridging the gap between cutting-edge technology and customer value. From shaping the narrative of AI infrastructure at AWS to leading product marketing for AI inference platforms at Nvidia, Shruti has transformed complex technology into stories that drive growth. In this episode, we will explore how Shruti blends technical depth, strategic vision, and storytelling to build powerful AI product narratives.
First of all, thank you so much for that very kind introduction. We are friends, and as a friend, you see me in the best positive light. So, thank you so much for that. And thank you for having me. It's so exciting with what you're doing, Gwen. I say this often. I love what I do, but the best thing to be doing right now in the AI space is to build. And you are doing that. And more power to you. And I'm so excited to speak to you today.
Honor is mine, I would say. Congrats to your new job. Are you in the office today?
I am. Usually I work from home, but I had to come in. There's no dull day at Nvidia, I will tell you that. So
I
it's
have
super
no
exciting.
doubt. So I want to open up with a more broad question. You wrote a lot of product narratives. I have to ask you, first of all, what drew you to AI and as well as semiconductor, and what are you most excited about working in this space?
Yeah. Gwen, I wish I could say that this was always my passion and love at first sight. But what is true for me, as it is for many, is that a lot of this was pathfinding. It was figuring out where could I be useful and where was my curiosity pulling me, right? Most of my graduate school work was in AI. And then I graduated in 2008 when the economy was rough. So I found myself at the only job I could get at a semiconductor startup in Austin that eventually became part of ARM. And that's how I really learned the semiconductor industry from the inside. And at the time, I was a hands on engineer, and I took pride in learning fast and adding value wherever I could. But pretty early on, I also sort of knew that this wasn't my long term calling to be a hands on engineer. And while it took me a few iterations, I found my way into product marketing at a AI powered ad tech company. And that's when I realized that product marketing was something I genuinely enjoyed as a function. And then finally, when I took the role at AWS, leading product marketing for AI infrastructure, everything clicked. There's a Steve Jobs line about how the dots connect only looking backward. And that's very true for me. My graduate school education in AI, my semiconductor experience at ARM, and my product marketing background from AdTech all came together in that role at AWS. And yeah, I mean, now at NVIDIA, I'm at the epicenter of AI in many ways, and it's is super exciting. So what drew me first is not that I knew that AI or semiconductor or product marketing was what I was going for. I guess I was kind of just letting my curiosity pull me in those directions. And then to answer your second question, what keeps me energized to be working in this field, I think, is the learning. I loved being in school. In fact, I would often joke that if someone would pay me to just keep learning, I will happily do that. And working at this sort of edge of innovation within AI at a company like Nvidia means that you're constantly learning. You're learning from customers, you're learning from colleagues, from the market, from the technology. And that's really energizing for me.
I really like the line. Your curiosity leads you to NVIDIA. And in addition to that, you're constantly learning because of the curiosity, right? I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah. On the side note, I also worked in ed tech very briefly. I feel like it's, like you said, looking back, everything, all of the dots can be connected and all lead you to where you are today. In my early career, I was a journalist. I found my way to marketing, first of all, through a tech company. Because, in order to do advertisements, in order to do SEO really well, you need to be sensitive and you need to love the language first and know the keywords and search queries and be obsessed about it and then tweak the verbiage, the keywords, and then to optimize the performance.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, I made a lot of friends when I was in ad tech, and I learned a lot about marketing measurement, about why so much of marketing measurement is imperfect and how you can still work around it. No, I think I didn't know that we had that in common. Gwen, that's great.
Yeah. I want to ask another question, slightly different, but also related to your past journey. So you worked on both sides, product management as well as product marketing, right? They have different goals and they operate different organizations. I know some companies, they intentionally put product marketing inside product management, but then a lot more companies are putting them separately. So, considering you have such a unique background, can you share a little bit like how is your product management experience helping you to work as a product marketer and vice versa? Like, how do you coach or teach a person to have a product marketer mindset?
Yeah, yeah. I think that what you said at the end is the right framing for this. Instead of coaching marketers to think like product managers or vice versa, I think it's about understanding how the two roles show up differently, right? And then being really thoughtful about how they can partner really well together. So, first of all, both PMs and PMMs are deeply customer obsessed, just in different ways, maybe, perhaps at different moments, but that is very central. PMs are ultimately accountable for deciding what gets built and what doesn't, and they're doing that under very real constraints. And then PMMs are accountable for ensuring that the value of what gets built actually makes sense to customers and lands in the market. And they are doing that also under certain constraints. So if ever these teams find themselves at odds, with each other, the best customer ground is customer obsession, of course, is going back to the basics of what are the customer needs. But to be specific, one of the advice that I give product marketers is that anytime they are bringing the market feedback back to the product management team, stay grounded in the problem space. Don't jump to the solutions. PMs will get frustrated when conversations jump straight to features. So, if you're bringing insights from customers, lead with the problem that you're hearing, not the solution that the customer asked for or not the solution you think the customer needs, right? Use your research and discovery skills to get to the underlying why. PMs love to ask why because ultimately, what the PMs are trying to do is synthesize capabilities that can not only answer your why, but also five other whys, right? Because every customer need is different and they need to look at it far more holistically than just zooming in on this one need that you brought to their notice. So that's the first thing is spend more time in the problem space and that will get them excited. And then my request to the PMs is to involve product marketers as early as possible in product development, ideally right from the discovery process. Include them in the early customer conversations or your ongoing customer conversations, because this is going to help product marketers land the product much better, which is ultimately what the PMs care about, right? Like they do own the sort of success of the product, whether it is in terms of user adoption or revenue. And so I think, yeah, those sort of are the two things that if I had to bubble up, would be the things I would bubble up to PMs and PMMs. Amazon is really good at this in terms of it doesn't always work with every single team at Amazon or AWS, but at least there is a mechanism in place, the PR fact that is very well known, which is that before even we start building, we write the press release of what would we want this to say when we launch this to the world. And the PMM team is brought into that conversation, which is super helpful.
Since we're talking about narrative, I think it's a good transition to narrative topics. So you've worked with some of the most technical products, GPU, AI infrastructure, AI inference platforms. What is your secret sauce or anything you can share to the audience? How to turn super, super technical product into product narrative that's simple, that's memorable, as well as resonating with customers?
Yeah. There are a lot of things in a product marketer's toolbox that can make the complex simple. Could be an explainer video, it could be how-to tutorials, it could be demos, it could be analogies, it could be visuals, it could be a architecture diagram, and so on and so forth. Like the list goes on. But before you pull out the right tool, or rather, before you pull out a tool, you need to figure out which is the right tool. And to do that, you need to level set on a few things. First is what is the core technical innovation and why does it matter, right? What is the product truth? And why does that truth matter in the customer's world? How would they describe the pain and the win, not you, right? So that's number one. Second is who is the audience? Are you speaking to developers, engineers? Are you speaking to technical or business decision makers on the customer side? Or is it a very broad audience, including, say, retail investors like your neighbors, the general public who might invest in your company? And you are trying to communicate all these new innovations that will give them the confidence to invest in your stock. Um, and then finally, I think, what are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to create awareness? Is it about thought leadership? Is it to drive demand? So the goals matter too. So all of those are extremely important things to consider. And then once you have figured out all of those, then you can figure out, okay, now that I know this, what are the tools in my toolbox that I can bring out to use to land a particular innovation? And maybe let me give you an example. So when I was working on thought leadership for AWS AI chip, Trainium at AWS, this thought leadership article was to target a broad audience. And I had to communicate some innovations on power delivery. And instead of just giving the speeds and feeds and numbers and things like that, it was really helpful to use an analogy. It was helpful to say that inside this chip, we are switching the same order of electrical current that an electrical vehicle charger delivers through thick cables, except we are doing it in an area that is smaller than a US quarter and doing it in just a few nanoseconds. And an analogy like that maybe will make it more memorable, will make it sticky. It helps people grasp the innovation and contextualize it by drawing upon a thing that they know in their daily lives. I think that's what you have to do, which is how do you speak the language that your audience, whoever that audience is, will understand? And it's again going back, it's very important to define the audience because if, for example, I was speaking to hardware engineers or engineers for this, I probably wouldn't need to do what I just did. They would probably really appreciate the speeds and feeds. And if I didn't give them those, they would be frustrated. So it's all about calibrating who you are speaking to, what level of technical depth is what they will be looking for, and then pulling out the tools in your arsenal to tackle it.
So just to summarize, you mentioned a lot of secret sauces of turning a technical concept into a simple, memorable, and customer-centric narrative, right? You mentioned First of all, you have to understand the technology and what is the innovation you are bringing to the market. Secondarily, you have to understand your audience. Are you talking to a technical audience? Are you talking to not so technical audience? And then you have to understand your goals, what you are trying to achieve, right? And then also analogy probably helps a lot, especially for non-technical audience. Do you have a like specific example of speaking to executives for a super technical technology? What is your method talking to executives and the media, maybe analysts as well, because they are so different from technical audience?
Yeah, no, I think you have to balance storytelling and technical depth. And it goes back to what you were just saying. It goes back to knowing your audience and then deciding very early on what do you want them to take away from whatever marketing asset you might put out, like blog, interview, podcast, social post. It always helps to start with writing, these are the top two, three takeaways I need to land in this particular asset. And the way you go about that is you build a layered approach, right? At the very top is a simple story of innovation that anyone can understand. It's like a lot of it explain it as how would I explain it to my grandmother? And that exercise may not always be useful, but it could be useful because it is targeted at that very broad audience. Then you go one layer deeper where you are talking to maybe business decision makers, and you need to now figure out the business benefits across different segments or verticals. Then you go one more layer deeper where you're talking about specific capabilities and features for more technical decision makers. And this is where maybe your very high level, but yet technical narratives start to be woven in. And then finally, even deeper, are hands on engineers or developers who need to know everything, who need to know how to use those features and what it actually helps them with, and so on and so forth. So once you have a fair understanding of what your narrative looks like across, say, those four layers, and there could be more, then you can bring those layers to life through different assets. And in some cases, you focus only on one or two layers. So, for example, in a thought leadership blog, you might only touch upon one or two layers. In a technical blog, you might only touch on the bottom two layers. Oftentimes, you do actually have to cut through all of the layers. And a really great example of that is something like a keynote. In fact, our CEO, Nvidia CEO Jensen, is a master storyteller who can talk about the high level simplified story for, say, the media and the financial analysts in the room who need to understand what Nvidia is doing next. But then there's also all the sort of specific details for the really technical audience, the CTOs, the system engineering folks who are tuning in to learn more about our technology. So it's having that view, a layered view on your narrative. And you asked me earlier about, is there a specific example? At AWS, when we were at AWS, right? The CEO keynotes are a really great place where you have to balance storytelling with technical depth. And a lot of the tools that we talked about earlier in terms of architecture or visualization start to come into play because you're talking to a very broad audience and you don't want to lose any of them. You need the technical audience to stay hooked and interested, but also at the same time making sense to the more broader audience.
Mm. I think you mentioned AWS. I think they have a smart idea, smart way of leveling different content, right? In Keynote, first of all, you have a slide, overview slide speaking about problem, and then you have a solution slide speaking about benefits, and then you bring a customer on stage to exemplify how they're using this product. And then later on, you bring a demo to show the product in action. So for customers who are waiting to dive deeper, you can tell the audience, hey, we have a L300, L400 developer session, workshop session.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. AWS does a fantastic job, especially at reInvent, and it just happened last week. I did not get to go this year, but yes, absolutely. So yeah, that is a really great example.
Yeah. So I have another question, narrative, and I will jump to other topics. So in the market that have a lot of offerings of a particular to address a particular problem, right? How do you make sure your product narrative is differentiated?
Yeah. Crafting a product narrative that is differentiated, memorable, and cuts through the noise is really hard. It just is. It's not easy. And there's, of course, the basics, what my mentor taught me as the sweet spot analysis. So there are four pillars of this sweet spot analysis. There's the market pillar, which is looking at market trends and context. There is the competitive landscape. There is your own product differentiators. And last, but absolutely not the least, is the customer needs. And then from that integrated view, you pull together something that is a compelling differentiated advantage. So compelling because it addresses a real customer pain, differentiated stands out from the competition, and advantage because it should articulate a clear advantage. And that is a integrated process, and it's also iterative. So you might start with looking at market and then competition and product and what is the customer needs, and you have to keep going a little bit around and round in circles to be able to synthesize it into something that is compelling, differentiated, and articulates an advantage. So that's a basic framework, but every marketer has some version of that. This is what my mentor taught me, and this is what I think works really well for me. But every marketer has some version of that. And what I see missing, though, often, and that is not to say I always get it right, by the way, right? What I also see missing often in my own work is the why now, because why now creates urgency. And that urgency is often what makes a narrative resonate. Because especially in B2B, benefits, like when you talk about your capabilities and their benefits, they sound very familiar and similar. It's performance, it's cost savings, it's productivity, it's speed to market, and ease of use. It's all of that, and it's always true. So, okay, well, they're just going to pass it. It's not even going to land because this is what they get bombarded with all the time, they as in customers. What will make them lean in and learn more is if you are able to articulate why now? Why should they think about your product now? Right? Because that is what matters today more than ever. What is it that matters today more than ever, rather? And then how is that linked to the value that your product delivers? And I will give you an example. This might get a little technical, but I'm going to attempt to not make it too technical. So at NVIDIA, we are marketing the NVIDIA GB200 NVL72 system. This is a rack scale design where 72 GPUs function as though they were one. And the why now that we've tied it to is the massive adoption of these type of models called mixture of experts models. These models, or rather this architecture, the mixture of expert architecture, powers the top 10 most intelligent open source models. All of them use mixture of experts. In fact, likely several proprietary ones also use mixture of experts. So beginning end of 2024, 2025, we've seen customers lean really hard into this mixture of experts architecture. And this GB200 NVL72 system is purpose built for it. It has capabilities that most competitors don't have, which is this sort of ability to scale up to this 72 GPU domain. And it helps solve that inference at scale problem today. So the why now piece is what makes it really stick. And we saw this success recently, right? When we articulated it as most models today are MOE. In fact, the top 10 most intelligent models today are MOE. And deploying them is hard. And GB200 makes it easy, practical, efficient. That's when, the broad audience, for example, media or customers or even your retail investors will finally go, oh, aha, I get it. Like it's relevant. It's relevant today and it's relevant for this reason. So it's not always possible, by the way, because there may not be a why now. It might be an ongoing value proposition that is always going to be true for you. And we need to make the sale and market this product to you year over year. It's hard to find a truly resonant why now, but that is what we should all be striving towards.
Listeners, I would encourage you right now to think about why now when you are crafting your messaging, your product narrative. I need to think through my why now narrative for my product. And I want to transition to signals, which is the common thread of this podcast series. At AWS and then now at Nvidia, you've worked on a lot of new products. So when you are crafting the product narrative or messaging framework, how do you detect or discover those signals? And how do you make sure your tagline, your narrative resonate with the audience before you launch them?
So I think you would look at a mix of quantitative and qualitative signals, right? So in terms of quantitative signals, it could be hopefully before you launch the product, you at least have some sort of a preview stage or a beta or a gated preview, something whereby you have had a chance to show the product, send a free trial or something like that to some of your early customers. And so on the quantitative side, you can look at things like how many customers actually tried out the free trial, how many of them, how active were they when they tried out that free trial. You could do surveys of with those customers that kind of give you some quantitative metrics on whether the benefits that you think this product delivers and you're going to use in your sort of launch messaging are the benefits that they truly see. So you could measure some of that through surveys and so on and so forth. Now, those same quantitative metrics look different once you've launched the product, right? We all know about awareness metrics and reach, engagement, impressions. Like you can do messaging pull through in media articles or do some form of social listening. So before and after launch, there are these quantitative signals that you can rely on. And those are obviously very early signals that can then be precursor to what you should expect in terms of adoption and revenue. But then numbers only tell a part of the story. So it's also really important to pay close attention to anecdotes, the conversations that you're having with customers, your, for example, preview customers, or some early feedback from sales about what the customers are saying about this product, or what the customers are saying about the specific challenges that this product is supposed to solve, and even maybe early social chatter around the capabilities and functionality that your product is going to launch in, right? In your space, what is the early chatter, social chatter around the challenges that this um, product is going to solve? So those are then going to give you a sense of how the story will land because you are trying to get a sense from more qualitative signals. And one thing I really like about what Jeff Bezos says is about the anecdotes not matching the data. And then you need to go back and look at your data and see if you're looking at the right metrics to begin with. Because oftentimes, if these two things don't match, maybe there is some sort of a problem. Maybe it is just a anecdote that is just noise, which is it wasn't a signal. It was just an exception, not the rule. But sometimes it can expose what one might call just misframing of what are the metrics we should be tracking. So yeah, so I think I blurred the lines there a little bit between post-launch and pre-launch, but those quantitative and qualitative is both important. And I will give you an example. So when I joined AWS, Trainium and Inferentia, which are the AWS AI chips, it was in its early phases. And certainly I was in my early phases of marketing those chips. And we'd have multiple events, training events, where lots of attendees showed up, but not a lot of them would know what the chips were. And questions were a lot more fundamental. Over time, that shifted. And people not only knew what the chips were, but they were asking a little bit more thoughtful questions about what is the SDK support and so on and so forth. So that kind of told us that maybe the awareness, understanding, and engagement was growing. So it's it's those anecdotes and those stories that you also need to pay attention to. Because here's the other thing: if you are measuring something, your competitors are probably measuring the same thing. It's not rocket science, in many cases anyway. And then if we are all measuring the same thing, you're all optimizing for the same thing. The anecdotes are what provide the color and the commentary on tweaking what you measure or realigning what you measure. And that is maybe where your differentiation could come from. So, yeah, a big believer in marrying the two.
Sounds to me you're working with a lot of data points. That's a lot of research. Do you do all by your own, or do you collaborate with other teams like engineering teams and sales team?
Yeah, no, product marketing sits at such a important intersection of sales, engineering, product, partner, customer, and we have to be everywhere. In many ways, we are the glue that holds it all together. That's a very self-affirming way to position what product marketers do. But
It is glue.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, but absolutely, cross-functional collaboration is really key. And the important thing there is to align on the goals. It's about understanding what each team cares about, what are they trying to achieve, and then finding the overlapping goals that we can all rally around. And who does that really well? Partner marketing. Partner marketing never starts by talking about what they want to do. They always lean in and ask, what are you trying to do? How can I make you successful? And I think product marketers can learn a lot from that mindset. Because once you understand each team's goals, you can then identify which goals are shared. And sometimes that might be easy. For example, new customer acquisition is something we can all rally around. Sounds great. But at other times, it could be trickier. Like sales might be focused on, say, getting existing accounts to adopt a new capability because that's their fastest path to hitting the revenue in Q4. But marketing is building pipeline for the next year. And so now, in such a case, you have to make the tension explicit. You have to come together and discuss who owns what and can we agree on shared objectives that respect both these timelines, the end of the year and building the pipeline for the next year. And then you can align on the common KPIs that maybe can be co-owned. So for example, in this scenario, like maybe the common KPI is the number of case studies that are produced from existing accounts, because that is a good goal for sales to have since they are trying to drive adoption on existing accounts by year end. And it's also a great goal for marketing because nothing helps creating pipeline better than case studies. So it's all about leaning in, learning about what the other team is trying to do, and then figuring out how can we align on some KPIs that are common and then others that are our own independent goals.
Mhm. Yeah, that I think that's a very smart way to work because product marketing has to oftentimes have to leverage other team for sure, aligning on a common KPI and then the mindset shift to how can I help you achieve your goals faster and better. It's a very smart way of working.
Yeah, and I learned that absolutely from the partner marketing teams, both at Nvidia and AWS, actually, because when I was at AWS, I worked a lot with both those teams, and both those teams do a fantastic job of really leaning in. I remember my Nvidia counterpart, like he would open every meeting. His name is James Allen. He's a great friend and well, now a colleague here. He would open every meeting with, what are you trying to do? How can I help you? What are your goals for this quarter? And clearly, he has his own goals too, but that's how he would open. And it really made me think about collaboration.
I want to switch gears to AI and the future of marketing, our favorite topic. As we all know, AI moves so fast every day. There are so many launches and so many innovations. So, how do you keep your product narrative fresh and relevant to the latest innovations out there in the market. I would say fresh and differentiated from your competitors.
Yeah, I think the answer is actually pretty simple and it's very meta, which is that I use AI to keep up with AI. Because with everything moving so fast, AI is the perfect answer to help you scale yourself and become more productive. As an example, because I am now tasked with marketing cutting edge inference platform, I need to know what is happening on the inference frontier. What is the latest and greatest research? And so I might get sent a paper by our engineering team, our product team, and I have to read it. But it takes a long time to read an archive paper. And so I might upload it to something like Notebook LLM, and then which converts it into a 20-minute podcast that I can listen to on the go. Now, if I want to dive deeper, I might chat with Notebook LLM and dig into some of the details. And then, yes, in some cases, I might actually go read the actual paper, but this time I won't get lost in the complexity of the math or whatever. I know exactly what section I want to zoom in on and read more about. And this approach, I think, isn't just for AI marketers. It's applicable for everyone. You can use AI to stay on top of the advances in your field, to understand how customer sentiment is changing or how their challenges are evolving, and so much more. About combining technology with curiosity, and kind of that's how you ensure that your positioning stays fresh and credible. That's also how you try and identify the why now, like what is happening at the bleeding edge of innovation that I can then tie my product value proposition to.
Yes, I tried for podcast. I think it's cool, pretty cool. I need to try other things. I want to ask a follow-up question on this. How often do you think we should update product messaging framework?
The answer to this is probably going to be it depends. It depends on your sort of type of product, how fast the industry and the needs of your customers or what is cutting edge is changing. For example, within AI, I think we need to, at the least, look at it every quarter. And I probably will get lots of people rolling their eyes in the sense that, are you kidding me? We are doing this every week, kind of a thing. So I am saying at the minimum every quarter. But in some other cases, you might not need to do that. You might just stay locked and loaded for 6 months. And then it's about sort of execution, like razor sharp focus, take the message, it is sealed, and repeat it till you are bored. And to some extent, even your customers are bored. Like this is one of the things another of my mentors used to say, which is that you have to keep saying it till you get bored. It has to be in every social post, every blog post, every podcast, every event. Like that's how you're hitting the nail again and again, 100 times, 1,000 times is how you land the message. Some of it is truly just brute force. And you got to do that. And that takes a lot of persistence, a lot of focus, not to get distracted. So it really depends on what space your product lives in, what industry your customer sits in, so on and so forth.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Another question on marketing plus AI. So right now, as you mentioned, you're using a lot of tools to do your work better and faster. How would you envision the product marketing, this craft will change in the next 5 years?
I want to start by saying what I don't want to change. I really want product marketers to stay very hands on with their positioning and messaging work. Yes, use AI to research customer needs, use AI to research competition, use it to understand market trends. In fact, even use it to understand your own technology that goes into your product. But please put your thinking cap on and synthesize all of those into positioning and messaging yourself. Do the writing yourself, do the work yourself. As someone who enjoys writing both professionally and personally, I know that for me, writing is thinking. I think by writing. And I wouldn't want my strategic thinking to be outsourced to AI. Now, that being said, AI is incredible for scaling. Once the positioning and messaging is built, you can create customized AI agents that understand it and then help the broader teams use it. For example, to draft social copy for a launch or brainstorm a title for a thought leadership blog. I remember the AI PMM team at AWS did this. We had created this sort of positioning messaging doc and then used it to make a custom AI agent. And it was really useful. So for me, AI is a tool to augment, not replace the core craft of product marketing. You should use it in a way that frees you to focus on the thinking, the synthesis, the creativity, where it all comes together. Those are the parts that I think really define the core of what product marketing is. And you should use AI to help you focus on that part a lot more.
So dedicate AI to research, to scale, but then you should leave the core as well as the foundation of product marketing to yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. We need to wrap up. I have two questions. Both of them are advice. So first one, what is the advice you would give to somebody who wants to break into AI?
I think that question could mean two things. So if it's about being a product marketer and wanting to become a product marketer for AI, my advice is go for it if you're truly passionate about it, but don't chase AI because it is a trend. AI is going to come to every domain, every product sooner rather than later. And building on your core domain expertise is what will really stand out. You don't need to chase it. Instead, become an expert in your own domain and learn how AI is or will impact it. And that's going to make you a far stronger marketer. And the second way that question could be interpreted is how to break into using AI. And that's pretty simple. Start small, pick one tool, one use case. For example, like we discussed plenty of them in this podcast, ask AI to give you a analysis of your competition and tell it that you're a product marketer, give it a little bit more context and see what it spits out. And try a few different tools, see what works for you, and over time, I think you will build a minimal toolkit that helps you without making you feel overwhelmed.
What is the best career advice you've received?
So I have a little bit of a longer answer for this. It's a little bit of a story, but I'll try to get through it quickly. There was a time in my career when I was feeling pretty lost. I was part hands on engineer, part outbound product manager. And I felt like I enjoyed that, but half of my brain, the one that liked to write creatively, the one that wanted to be more of an artist, wasn't being used at all. And I went on this career search journey with a coach, explored everything from psychology, teaching, trying to figure out what could be a better fit. And I looked around and I wondered why I was feeling so restless when everyone else seemed to be holding on to their jobs and doing just fine. I had a great job at ARM. It is a wonderful company to work for. What more was I looking for? And then my coach said something that has completely changed my perspective. He said, Shruti, your generation is different than your parents. Theirs was about putting food on the table, creating a stable environment. You are standing on their shoulders. You are coming from a place of privilege. Use that privilege wisely to find what will make you feel alive because the world needs more of that. Your generation will change careers, not just jobs. And you'll do that a few times. So just don't sweat it. And he just said it so simply, but it absolutely opened up the world for me. It freed me up to experiment. I took a job in a lighting startup in LA, and that gave me business experience that no MBA could have ever taught me, certainly not as cost effectively. And while that advice did not immediately lead me to product marketing, which is where I think I'm meant to be, it laid the foundation for everything that came next. And I eventually found my way to PMM. So, to sum it up, the career advice that I carry with me is this: Be excellent at what you do and add value to the world with what you are good at, which for me was engineering at the time. But if your heart is searching for more and your circumstances allow it, take the time to explore. Find what makes you feel alive, because that's where you'll do your best work and the world will benefit from it. And I've seen this happen to me. And so, for all those listening and all those feeling lost, stick with it, keep adding value, don't give up, but also keep searching. Don't give up on that either.
This is incredible, Shruti. I love it. This is so a lot of insights, and I just want to thank you for being so authentic and humble, and yeah, be excellent at what you do, and don't stop exploring, and find your passion, and do the work you love. That's the best way to contribute to the society. I
Yeah.
think I don't have
Yeah.
a better way to end this episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, Gwen, and thanks for having me.